This would be what we call episode 2, if we were to be so bold as to dare assume the pilot took off and has been picked up by an old corporate studio of setting the scene.
All right.
And I had ideas, but I guess I would go with something like, "Welcome to setting the scene, where the points don't matter, the setting's not real. Welcome onto the stage, local guests, Darth Hentai, and Severs. Gentlemen, introduce
Yeah, let's go.
yourself."
Go ahead, Seth.
Um, I am Severs. I bring to this a little over 25 years of gaming experience, and I'm hoping that I can provide a little bit of some spice to these proceedings.
What kind of
And
spice?
the kind that must flow.
Not sure if the Dune reference flies here, I'm not sure. I'll have to ask our panel of judges once I hire a
My
panel
panel
of
of judges?
judges. Something like that, yeah.
And I am Darth Hentai, but I have 32 years of collective gaming experience, both as a player and a GM. And once again, I'm doing this one off the cuff.
My name is Artemis. I played a video game for like 5 minutes, so I'm entirely qualified to be here. True story.
But what video game was it?
Superman 64.
Oof.
Could have been worse.
Cut it though. Cut it.
It could have been The Wall.
I mean, I've played with a wall before. That's basically Pong, right?
An earlier release of, I believe it was Ikaruga on the NES. It was unbeatable due to an error in the code that basically just put a wall up in front of you, separating you from the last boss, so you couldn't kill him.
Haha.
The game was unbeatable.
That's actually hilarious. That's actually, they must have made so much money.
Yeah.
But so
It's a meme.
as people may or may not know, I am making a tabletop RPG system of my own to go with a homebrew setting of my own in a Final Fantasy-esque game. And there are many things that go into making your own homebrew setting. A lot of them you tend not to think about because you go in with the really bright-eyed idea of, this is going to be really cool if I do this, and then you realize, much like any home project, you also have to make the rest of it. So, I'm really... I don't even want to say good. I'm okay at putting together little theme piece sets that are interesting. I can sort of produce a roller coaster of entertainment. However, the thing about roller coasters in a theme park is you gotta have some infrastructure between them, and that's where I begin to fall a little bit short. Especially when it comes to things that I just don't understand about the world. Things like, how does one company end up with a monopoly? How does one manage a monopoly or a ring of merchantry and conniving, or however money actually works? Money isn't real, okay? That's the moral of the story. Money isn't real, and so I don't have to understand it. But for the purposes of the game, I have to pretend I understand it. And so this leaves me with a conundrum. And I've decided to solve that conundrum by throwing 2 other people under the bus today. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different from the first episode. It'll be similar, because that's what setting the scene is about. It's about building a world. However, my 2 guests here are completely in the dark about the trouble I am about to put them through. So,
This is the way I like it.
I think he just likes trouble. I think he's just a trouble man.
Pretty much.
But
Look, GMing itself is trouble, so
you're not wrong. Why do you keep doing it so much? No, wait, that answers itself.
Because no one else runs games.
That's not true. You're in like 4 of them.
If they run.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Mine's pretty much the only one that regularly runs.
I
The
see.
other ones don't.
And you, Severs?
I mean, I go out and find other people to GM for me. No, but I am looking at maybe GMing again soon. But
Oh, nice.
Oh man, sounds like he's been traumatized by his prior experiences GMing.
no, I've done it before. I've had a degree of success, but I'm still player focused enough as opposed to GM focused that I don't have all of my full GM confidence.
I feel like that's a common thing. I feel like your first game or 4 GMing, you achieve a degree of success. There's like that 1 or 2 really good moments, and the rest of it you look back on, you just kind of get that really exhausted look on your face.
Yeah.
But let's start with this. The premise for this is twofold. The first is that when you design a setting, you don't need a super complex world. In fact, it's completely okay if your world is simple, so long as the characters that inhabit it have a good odd to not be. So, I am going to be mostly sitting out of this. So, my first task to both of you, and I'm going to give you some think about it time as I lay this out, is that you are going to design 2 things about the world, 2 features. So the reason I'm telling you this in advance is so you have time to think. I'm going to describe the world. It's going to be a little bit strange. So take your time, think about it. After the initial phase, we're also going to move down the line. You 2 are basically going to be taking over as NPCs in a way. But
You poor, poor, unfortunate soul.
you've got 2 things each to add to the world. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of this world, because you each will be receiving points for this. You'll be working as a team. We are going to aim to achieve something around 30 to 40 points by the end of this. You get a point when I can reasonably conceive whatever you're describing in a way that if I were to turn this into a setting for a tabletop, I could see a way to get players to interact with whatever you're putting into the world. So that's your goal. It's not going to be hard. My brain is not very wrinkled, but I do like to overthink things a lot. So it's not going to be hard to get these points, but you're still going to have to work for this a little bit. If you end up with something too abstract, you are not going to get points for it. So the premise of this world is that we have a very big, very blue ball. And by very, I mean insanely. When I was talking about simple worlds, I meant it. There is only one belt of land ringing the entire planet. It is a single, continuous belt. You could, in theory, walk clear around the planet. So, that is what you guys will be adding features to. We're doing only land right now.
And do you have a visual aid for this one? Because I'm going to need it.
Let me see if I can drag something up real quick.
Because before, the world building and abstract worked kind of well, but without having a concrete visual aid and the ability, scratch and look here, this, there.
Don't worry, it's only gonna get more complicated the further you let me get into this. It was a mistake
That's okay.
to walk into this parlor.
Oh no.
For you?
So you think?
I've run LARPs. I'm fine.
We can fix that. Don't worry.
Unless you're bringing in hundreds of players, no.
I am hundreds of players.
You're not wrong.
It's true. Let's go with... Let's keep this real simple. Really, really, really dummy simple. I'm going to draw something in, like, paint. Simple. Because this is gonna get weird as it goes.
Okay. Is it like roll 20 or something?
Oh no, I'm just drawing in paint. You'll see in a second.
Because if you do it in roll 20, we can actually sketch on there as well.
True, that is an idea. If I had thought of that before this, that would have been something I considered. However,
So you want me to set for roll 20 real quick? I'm actually paying for an account, so...
Why are
What
you
is
paying
Misha's
for an account? What do you get from that?
Storage space, so you can have lots of music and other crap, and people can go into the game on devices other than just the,
Oh, you have to pay to access that on mobile?
so as long as the GM is paying, any player can access it.
Hmm.
And if I enter someone else's game, since I'm paying, I can do it. Other people in that game can't.
Do a lot of people that you play with actually use that feature though?
We've actually made some pretty good use out of it a couple times. One person's computer crashed in the middle of everything. That was during the Ruby game, if you recall.
I don't. I have the memory of a Swiss cheese wheel with more holes than it should.
Yeah, Mouse's system died on him.
Rest in peace, Mosu.
Yep. And he had to use the
That is an orb worth pondering.
That is a ponderable orb. Alright.
That
now,
is
I'm gonna just take your ponderable orb here and save the image, and I'm gonna slap it on the roll 20.
That is an orb with a belt of land. It's very simple. And so you each can add 2 major features to it. You can do something to a portion of land. You can add a feature. We're not doing any like weird outside islands or anything like that, though. It's just a belt of land for now.
Okay.
Well,
it stops the typical throw a floating island in there for the shiggles.
Yep. We're keeping it real simple for now.
I mean, that's a Final Fantasy trope and a half.
Don't worry, I can ruin things later. I'm good at that.
Okay, cool.
That's my superpower.
Nice. I'm almost done adjusting things in here, and I'll get the... No, let's get the link right now. Not image link.
What do you mean everything's an image link if you look at it long enough?
If I give you guys the image link, it'll just take you to the image of the words rather than the words itself. There you go. Need to add 5 more rows on the other side. All right. So there we go. Now, let's move that to the map layer. And I will now give Zart full control.
Again, we're keeping it simple, so just don't fuss over it too much.
Okay, so I guess the question is, what's the batting order?
Let's go first, man.
Okay.
Since I'm more reactionary.
You know what? In the interest of keeping things simple, will say that since this is centrally located on the orb, that the dominant sort of climate you're going to see is a kind of tropical one.
Okay. And you then, Fletch?
Let's just get in here and already mess things up with a mountain. Let's do a circle, I guess. About there-ish.
Okay.
Big mountain.
Excellent.
The spine of the world types.
That leaves you, Severus.
Oh man. Let's say, what are we going to say? I will draw on this thing too. That
I didn't sign up for shit.
on the eastern side of things, things are sort of dominated by inland lake.
Nice.
And one more for you, Fletch.
All right. Let's go ahead and I guess I'll change my color to a different green. I think it's a green.
Oh no, he's colorblind.
And a swath of tropical forest along this way.
Interesting. All right. So, here's the twist for today. I am going to be minimally participating. However, I have pre-written a series of small events that basically define eras for this world. They are all relatively simple in their bearing. The first and most important is that you two are getting separate sides of the world. And how that's going to work is the first thing the creation deity did around here is going to be just a nice whole line of mountains clear across the entire world, which I would draw if it would let me, but this is being enemy shaped. We'll go with that line as that. So, one of you will get one side of this belt, and the other will get the other side of this belt.
Is it not letting you draw a line?
It drew one for me. Did it not draw for you?
Not. Oh, there it is now.
No.
Now it showed up.
So, one of you will get
So I did have it centered originally. Shit. Oh well.
one side, and one of you will get the other side. And you will each be operating on a system of 3 actions per era. Your job is to take control of a major NPC. You can kind of have things move as you want. However, you will have 3 actions. One of these actions will be something that works well for you. One of these actions will be a severe challenge that must overcome. And the third will be sort of kind of a middle ground between those. How things progressed because of that action, whether for better or for worse. So those will be, you'll get 3 of those actions every era. Your job as this NPC is to set up some kind of major financially dominant ecosystem. A megacorp, basically. We're keeping a fantasy sort of layout. You can use usual D&D races as you please. Your job is to create a megacorp on each side of the planet and then deal with things as they happen. So each time each of you handle your 3 actions, one of the pre-written events on my list will happen, and that will inform your next set of actions. We'll go for a couple of generations, and hopefully by the time this is done, we'll have a reasonably fleshed world just acting from one NPC's perspective apiece.
I usually wait to do things like this until we have more of a world, because one NPC alone does not make a setting. My only point of contention here.
It's understandable. And as I said, you're free to kind of define things in the general area of your NPC as you please. If you need orcs, orcs there shall be, so on and so forth. But we're going to kind of center each of the tales around these 2 NPCs and their generational families trying to raise up some kind of megacorp. Whether it's, your family brand Walmart, whether it's, tower in the sky, rule the place with money, whatever it may be. Your character is trying to raise a whole financially dominant ecosystem.
Again, I'm drawing blanks here because we're literally in a void. I'm a reactionary, not an actionary.
Okay.
So right now we are too close to tabula rasa.
Anything going for you, Severs?
I need far more than this.
Is there some sort of like a initial era defining event or something, or
Okay.
for this first era?
Yeah, because we literally have nothing.
I can pull something from the list for this then. So let's go with what do I have here that would look lovely besides the eruption of this mountain range? Let's see. Would we prefer something with people or places?
I'm fine with either.
Any preferences, Fletcher?
But not both.
Okay, people and places. We can do this. So, we're going to say that for the moment being, each side of the planet has roughly the same population. That population is, for the moment, evenly split between humans, orcs, most of the common races, common spoken races in D&D, and then your usual monstrous races subsects. Monsters do not yet exist at the basis of this world, because there is little foundation. However, the first thing that will happen is that on each side of this world, now that it's divided in halves, we will have... Let's see here. Borrow this freehand. No, I'll use a circle for it. Let's go with... Let's use this brown. We're going to say roughly on the belt, the very edge of the world for each side, there is a sect of devotees that pop up. Their entire goal as devotees, cultists, whatever you may call them, is to create the ultimate life that does not die. In both of their cases, they have found undeath as their answer. So they are in the middle of your territory, attempting to raise a city of death.
Okay.
that swath of land generally becomes rather hostile. They tend to want to invite people because they need working, living things to move their processes along. However, they do not exactly live long and prosper. Those that are dead tend not to need objects or maintain close relationships with the living and so forth.
Oh, undead out here ruining my capitalist utopia.
The undead are pretty happy with it. Everyone else, not so much. However, they
You said what?
tend not to leave that
Undead
area yet.
Undead make a great part of a capitalist utopia. They work forever. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to pay them anything.
He's going full megacorp already.
Dude, I have many a times made in fantasy settings made a basically a nation state that was led by necromancers.
Oh, that's rough. What? No.
So you basically just give me the key I needed here.
So that is your starting point. Remember, you need to do one thing that is beneficial towards your dominance. You need to describe one thing that causes a huge problem with it, and one thing, the consequences of it, for better or for worse, for this generation. It doesn't have to be a hereditary kind of thing. You can have, best person in the company takes over. It can be a family thing, whatever you'd like.
Alright. Fletch, do you have a preference over which side you take?
I'll let you go first, and I'll go and do. I guess I'll. Being I thought we were gonna have more building stage, I guess I'll take the void area.
Okay.
Because I think we have more chance to throw stuff on the map, rather than just a couple here and then done. Move on to the next stage.
Okay. Let's see. Zard.
Mm-hmm.
You said there's no monsters. Are there other creatures like indigenous wildlife?
There's plenty of wildlife, yes, and
Okay.
you can just add little things as you need. So if you need an overly populous section of rabbits or whatever, you can have that. Yeah. Whatever makes your idea work, run with it.
Okay. I think my beneficial action is we're gonna start off. We need some sort of either commodity or expanded workforce, and so the people still in their sort of not quite yet advanced phase of things are going to turn to nature for that. And so we're going to put out a extended effort of trying to teach non you're how would I put it, non-sapient things that aren't your standard walking talking humanoids, so your wildlife and such. We're going to do an extended effort to teach them to understand the common language. We may not actually have them be able to communicate back with us, but something where we could talk to them and maybe even be able to give them commands they could understand and such.
Okay, starting with domestication of the wildlife, then. Or are we talking more sort of lesser races like goblins, kobolds, or are we talking straight up animals?
All the way down. Anything that basically has the intelligence to be able to perceive it. We're going to be making an effort through whatever means we have, be they magical or just drilling into their head bits of the language.
Okay. So this is the first endeavor on your side, right?
Yes.
So this one is presumed successful. This benefits you in some way. So something like you do succeed in taming a majority of the wildlife that you are after, or something like that. So if you were
Okay.
after horses that can understand commands, dogs, and all that stuff, this goes well for you.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Lech, where are we starting from on your side?
Well, obviously, the first step in all of this is to take control of the cult.
Boy. Okay. So tell me more about that.
Well, they're looking for the ultimate manifestation of unliving, so it looks like it's lichdom for me.
Okay. So we're starting off things over there with a takeover of the not quite hostile section of the undead cultists and achieving lichdom. That is how that megacorp, that merchant ring, however it will turn out, starts. So I'm gonna say, how could I hook players into each side? I'd say it wouldn't be a bad thing to have some kind of let's gather different types of wildlife, some kind of helping, assisting with the testing on Sever's side. While I would probably do something more akin to, if I was to have them directly interact with the NPC, probably just help sneak them in, help get them a leg up to get into the cult and achieve that sweet, sweet lichdom. I'd say both of these work. I'll give you both a point for this.
Sure.
So then we move on to part 2, where things get complicated for each of you. So what goes wrong during this era for each of your endeavors? How do you deal with the challenge now that you have a leg up?
Well, I will say on my side of things that we'll go the opposite of how things are going on the other side of the world, in that the things with the cult turn hostile, and the people of the land aren't quite ready for it, and they're not able to sort of mount the proper defense, so they decide that they have to compromise, and so the action that is complicated or not beneficial to me is we regularly have to capture people and send them off as sacrifices to the cult to keep them from basically raiding us.
Okay. Alright. What do you got for me, Fletch?
Problem of being a leader of a cult of undeath is it's a cult of undeath. And it's not too popular in its starting phases. Let's be honest here. It's kind of hard to sell people on the idea of give us your dead and we don't raid you. If we never said we're not going to raid you, people are assuming we're going to raid them. So things are automatically hostile on our side as well. Because, well, who wants a cult of undeath running around here?
Fair. Okay. So let's see. How would I have the players interact with each of these things? Again, on Sever's side, it's a lot of, we've taken a general stance of having to give people over to the cult. The cult is definitely still the primary problem on this side. Whereas in the first part of this, the players might not have seen too much interaction with the cult itself. They might have felt its presence as they were gathering wildlife and other things to help this budding merchant or whatever they might be yet. In this case, it comes to a more direct opposition. It's easy to get the players either on the side of the people trying to save people who are being handed over, or to simply find those that would be apt to giving over. People like the Drakes of society and dragging those in. The players begin to have a little more choice there. I think that works well. I think I'll give Severs the point. For the other side, it seems like we could do much a similar thing, but from the other side. Whereas on Sever's side, it's kind of wibbly wobbly. There's a bit of a moral choice there, what the players would do. We're running much stricter choices on Fletch's side. You're either very evil and you're with the cult and you're trying to get people all up in that sweet, sweet undeath, or you're in direct opposition and you're trying to stop them. You could, of course, run the middle ground and just be trying to survive while you accomplish some other goal, but those two seem to be the most provoking choices. I think I can give the point to that. That's probably where I'd run things. Alright. And then finally, what happens as a result of each of these occurrences in your lands? How does that affect your startup?
Alright. Well, in my case, I'll say that it's got a trickle down effect from both of them, in that there are animals and such that are sort of working alongside, living alongside people. In this sort of corp society, whatever, and there's also a shift in that we'll say that there's some degree of the fantastical racism, so to speak, in that some of the non-human races have been the ones being sent off for sacrifice. And so a lot of them have started to splinter away from the humans. So we don't have as diverse a workforce, and we don't have the full support of the people of the land, but we do have animals helping us out.
Okay. And you, Fletch?
Well, let's be honest here. When you're basically one little niche spot on the map and you're not all that favored, it's a slow start. Our only really advantage is that every time they throw resources at us, that's more resources for us once they die. But it's really slow going, so we're not going to be expanding much right now. So it's mostly just maintaining our current holdings and weathering the initial storm of founding.
Okay. So this is a very early standpoint. This is kind of, we're thinking way back in the day, the ancient tales, kind of what's going on right now. That's kind of how the history of this world is working right now. It's not super often that I would say you see a campaign set in this kind of time. So having things for the players to do is kind of a fundamental, but it's also an interesting standpoint to take, because having your players involved in founding actions of the world gives a chance for later down the line type things. Whether it's by time travel, whether it's by a generational story where they take over new characters, there's lots of promise in the early world, and that's easy to see here. You can see the start of a company where we got our start raising the animals of the land to become our companions, to begin staving off the undead menace as kind of propaganda on one side. You can see the good old, we were just trying to bring them to the ends of mortality and beyond, to the things that mattered. You can see opportunities
Trying to get
for
rid of
both
sickness.
Exactly. Both of these have
Think what you would accomplish if you never die.
good opportunities for the players. I'm gonna say I think these both get the point. I think there's lots of opportunity to be had here. So that leaves us at 6 points. We're doing pretty well so far. So that leaves us with what happens next. And off this lovely little list that I have numbered for myself, Act 2, the next generation, so to speak, things have been pretty average for a while after that big upset. Things have been working, steady progress, nothing too lopsided towards success or the other way around. That's about to change. Part of hitting it big, as far as I know, is usually getting a lucky break or something similar. So, in this case, something fortunate happens for either side. There will be a major resource that appears in each side of the planet for each of you. One massive, absolutely huge resource that helps you push things along. Whatever you need, you get an abundance of this one resource, whether it's a mine that opens up into a magic metal that helps you, whether it's the discovery of a special underground forest, something that wasn't there before. So on our west side, we're going to go ahead and have that crop up in the form of a... What will I use for this? Why not this? We'll go with that. So this little piece of land kind of rises out of the ocean.
If you want to fill it,
Yeah.
just hit the same color on the other side of it.
We'll go with something like this. It's... Oh boy, I love Control-Z, it's the best. Except when it doesn't work. Something like this kind of pushes up out of the ocean. Not too far, but not too close. Mostly closer to your little undead polis. And for Severus' side, we're going to say that whatever your resource is, it happens in that lovely little lake you have over there. Something was discovered about the lake that gives you a whole giant opportunity. What you do with it, what you make of it, what it is, that's up to you. But those are the places you're going to be focused on for this particular era. Take a moment to ruminate on that. Take a moment to let your ideas take shape. What would give your budding world force a lot of momentum? And how does it come from this place? I guess accidentally, kind of, water is a big theme in this era. But we take that. Surprisingly, for all the water in the world, we're not actually using that much of that with this.
You said no adding water, no adding islands or continents.
Yep.
So not really building through that one. Now we will be.
And ready to go?
I think so. Is it the same format? One beneficial thing, one...
Mm-hmm. Same format as last time. It's going to be one thing that bolsters you, one thing that challenges you, and the results of that challenge for better or worse in the long term for the era.
Okay.
If you're ready, you can go ahead and take us off.
I'm gonna say that we didn't find something in the lake so much as the lake itself was our boon.
Okay.
And it has provided extremely fertile land all around it. And to the point that it's cropped up several natural crops that are beneficial. So we are in the we are moving into the food service business.
the food service business. Plenty of
We
farmland, plenty to feed the animals with, some interesting crops.
maybe even enough to send around the mountain to our friends on the other side of the world.
Maybe. We will see about that. And Fletch?
Well, since that obviously arose out of the ocean, this means it's probably a planar nexus of some kind, specifically an elemental planar nexus.
Okay.
Giving spaces in that location randomly access to the elemental planes of Earth, Fire, Air, and Water, making it right for those who can survive in such conditions, or who don't care about not being to breathe, or a crushing weight, or having enough things to throw at it that the fire doesn't matter so much, for harvesting.
Okay.
The other groups in the area really can't compete with this one. We have resources that tirelessly work. So, minerals from the plains of Earth, exotic waters from the plains of water, etc.
That is a good lead. So let's see. I think on Severus' side, that's pretty easy for the players to interact with. It's unlikely that you have a group of farmers on your hand, but if you do, I'm sure they'd enjoy it. But we probably run more towards the direction of having to protect the crops or helping with something that's causing issues there. It's a little rough and tumble to get the players involved with, but not too impossible. I think it could use a little. I don't think that alone is enough to quite get the point. On Fletch's side, it's a little bit easier because it's something wondrous, and that's usually great to work with. Depending on if the players, ended up working with the undead police or against it, they might have acquired some way to actually interact with it. Whereas on the other side, it's probably going to be, again, a campaign to stop these guys from getting more resources. It's easy for at least one side to work with. I think unless the player side that sided with the undead police kind of went full undead, it'd be a bit harder to work with, but I think it works well. That's how I feel about it, so I'm going to go ahead and award that point.
So one of the ways I kind of look at the whole undead faction is you're still going to have living people in it, and some of those could easily end up being commanders, leaders, etc. of undead forces. So there's a chance for PCs in there as being part of the ranks, or freelancers on either side of the line. Or just random mercenaries doing what adventurers do best and messing up everybody's plans.
Fair enough. We will go ahead and take that point. That leaves us at a whopping team total of 7 points. So, now comes the challenge. Now comes something that just doesn't work well for you in this whole situation, despite all else.
I think that one of the kind of result things of the last era will have spilled into this era, in that the non-human sentient races that were being displaced and sort of separated from the human population have kind of grown fed up with their treatment and whatnot, and have not only sort of settled their own land, which will, I'll actually do a little drawing of a section. But it's twofold. One, they've settled their own land, and part of that is the fertile land So they're getting some of those resources too. And they've actually become hostile as well towards the main population. And so now we have two threats. We have the undead and the people we sort of wronged.
Okay. All right. And what do you got for me, Fletch?
It comes with a planar nexus.
Problems?
Elemental natives.
Oh boy.
Because those things be popping everywhere, so something could come out through it. That's a problem for both us and our enemies. But since we're in there more, it's more a problem for us. So needing mercenaries to go through and protect the mining teams, or villages in the area, hiring players to go and, well, protect them from rampaging creatures.
I think these are both pretty workable situations. It's always good to have an abundance of a resource to lead to problems, it seems. It's always good to make other factions with an abundance of resource, and it seems to work well. Very easy to get players involved on both sides, because now there's a new enemy or a new ally in one way or another, and reward both sides a point here. Now comes the important part. How does your lovely little startup deal with this generation's problem?
Well, my group is starting to realize a little bit the error of their ways after seeing so many disaffected people pop up in opposition to us, especially since it's costing us part of the resources that we need to make things run. Um, so we're actually going to be setting aside um, a large part of our sort of material capital to engage in trade with, to a degree, both the undead and the people that we splintered off. Things still aren't kosher between all of us, but we're basically putting in the upfront payment to sort of open a diplomatic channel between our enemies and us, even if it costs us money.
Okay. I see you. What do you got for me, Fletch?
So he's using money to sweeten the deal with those around him. I'm going to be using units. All those separate little tribes and villages along the way. Well, we can use the fact that undeath means that, well, we never stop fighting. Start first taking over the guard duties, and then bring them into the fold.
Okay. So just pushing back against the elementals with a tide of bodies, huh?
And bringing bring those around us, into the idea of this is good for everyone's protection. So, contributing resources, people are taking up valuable land, etc. When you bury them, why bother?
Okay.
We'll trade you some resources for their bodies.
I think that there are good plot hooks on either side this time around. The moment a big faction puts aside something that could be construed as a reward, Well, it just becomes fact that the players need gold, they need resources, they need a way to do all of the wild, crazy, wacky things they want to. And that works well for Sever's side to get players intrigued in the current going on. So I can award the point to that easy. On Fletcher's side, I can sort of see it. There's going to be an interesting little way to handle things between the undead's constant seeming growth and what's going on with that intrigue down with the elementals and their planar interests. I think there's a lot of room to do things like have the undead try and mosey in on players guarding a town, or, the players being recruited to help the undead guard a town and finding them slowly creeping in on it, how they feel about it, what they do about it. I think there's lots
Players
of opportunity.
or players being sent in as emissaries to convince a little village to join the faction as well.
So I think it's an easy way to award both sides some points here. Setting at a rousing team total of 9, I believe. We're going along pretty well. So, let's take it into the third era of things. You've got your startup, you've got your resources, now it's time to make a name for yourselves. How do you become that social power, that financial power, that huge galumphing figure in the distance, the tower, the Walmart that the players visit every day, whatever it is, how do you become that staple becomes the question. So for this round's event of the world, that little mountain line in the middle, that big divider that's kept these two sides of the world apart, opens up. There's a series of small tunnels that seem to collapse open, and unfortunately, what pours out of them isn't pleasant for either side. However, it's more of a hindrance to those that would be trying to stop you than you. So the question is, how do you turn this into an opportunity to cement yourselves? What goes wrong with it? And how does this generation resolve?
Okay. And is it defined what it is that pours out of it, or is that part of what we're figuring out?
Elementals, Underdark, giant spiders, whatever you please. Whatever works best for you.
Excellent.
Those are the pros of being the person to make the setting and write the story. You get to choose what works best to make your NPCs.
Well,
how does this turn into their legacy?
I'm going to say on my side of things, we had something that has been missing for a while, and we've had a myriad of monsters pour out onto my side of things. But with the sort of early lessons we had with animals and the indigenous life, we actually managed to take those lessons and apply them to many of the monsters that came out, so that there are fantastical beasts that aren't necessarily overtly hostile. In fact, they at least understand us enough that we can have not necessarily them come in and join our efforts, but we're able to establish diplomacy first, and sort of your mindless hostile monster is the rarity instead of the sort of standard.
Okay. Lots of diplomacy branches coming out over there on the eastern side of things. What are we looking at, Fletch?
Well, like any good security corporation, when those who are against you have to end up turning to you because, well, both sides provide the most common occurring object you need, bodies. And they're pouring out daily. and they've already heard about how the hordes have wiped out other villages close to the mountain. We just send in some specialized teams to go and bring them into the fold, and then protect the villages and raise more bodies. Loot the corpses. Get the resources. Keep things moving.
Alright. So, that gives plenty of opportunity for both sides. Things are going well, diplomacy branches are opening up, there's plenty of time for the players to get in on this. They're obviously going to be intrigued by this new happening, and of course they would take some kind of monetary reward, if that, to go check it out. And on the other side, it is much the same. We're all about the murder hobo life over here. If it appears, that probably means we can kill it, or at least do something bad to make somebody else kill it. And hey, that works just fine for this side of the world. I'll award the point to both sides. That brings us to a lovely 11. So then, gentlemen, where does it all go wrong? What gives you the big stumbling block at the times? What's on the papers for what the upset it would be?
Well, on my side of things, I think we could use with since we're introducing many new monsters into things, we could use both with the emergence of iconic monsters and maybe an upset to the corp itself in the form of we have emerged a very powerful subset of monsters who decide that they want to run things. And we are sort of not powerless, but very outmatched, and sort of agree to be the face and handle the day-to-day running of things while we split the share of profits up to them. And of course, it couldn't be a more iconic form of monster than dragons emerging from the hole. So we are still running the corp, but dragons are taking their share of things to basically be the overlords and overseers of things.
Okay, a little usurping going on over here. A little usurping, a little crumbling of dominance. What do we got for you?
Well, anytime you have situations like this, where it's a very tense battlefield situation, you'll have people go through migrating and moving constantly. Those who really don't want to go through and join the fold will, of course, coalesce together to form a coalition for self-defense purposes. And, well, you know, that probably isn't a small group, so we're looking probably a stretch of kingdoms and villages there that aren't really with the program. This creates a problem here, as you can notice, because that's part of the supply line. That's part of the supply chain to the bodies. And they're close to the resources that we covet so much.
They want
So
our
going
stuff
from
and they're in the way.
Going from the Tomb City to Harvest or to Harvest is going to be dealing with raiders on both the squishy bodies being thrown against us of varying types, and unfortunately the rivals over here who still haven't gotten with the idea that this is probably for the best for them.
Alright. Plenty of strife, plenty of intrigue. Players do love a good dragon, and players will always be intrigued in another option popping up for better or worse for them. I think both sides can get an easy point here, an easy 13 rounding through. So, how do things end this time?
I think on my side, the introduction of monsters created a interesting situation in which, with them not being overtly hostile, many of them have taken up places in society, and in our corporation specifically, as contemporaries, and people who live in, well, not people, but creatures who live and work and um, coexist among us. And that's created sort of the substitute for what we had had in the first era before people got displaced. Is now we've still got the groups over on the edges of our land opposing us, but on the main stretch of the land, it's sort of humans and animals and monsters all sort of being one unified group underneath the control of the dragons.
Okay. And then you, Fletch?
Well, aside from the obvious benefit of getting even more bodies to fill the lower ranks, the living find something they've never really had. A chance to actually focus, learn, and dream. Artisans flourish because people don't have to, harvest the fields. If I'm dead for that. They have to work mines. We have undead for that. They don't have to serve on the battle lines. We have undead for that. So, craftsmen, artisans, etc. It's a new renaissance. In addition to getting, basic body stormtroopers to constantly fill the lower ranks, we're probably basically staying even, or just a slight, very small growth curve, just because it's a very bad battle line up there, and we have one very large front we have to go through just to deal with it. So, body resources wise, low, but artisans.
Okay. So it's sounding like it's definitely the beginning of a new era on both sides, both with the dragons cementing their place in the east, and with things settling down into enough of a base where people begin to grow on the west. I think there's lots of opportunity there, specifically in how people are dealing with their new lordships and troublemakers in the east. And in general, with all of the things happening with people in the West, they're going to need things and people to make these dreams, these ideals happen. I think that's very, very good. I think the player hooks will be easy there, whether it's getting players involved in finding rare or unique things that people need to make their dreams come true, or maybe just finding smugly holes away from the dragons that they just don't like starting to take over things. I think that's an easy pair of points awarded. That'll bring us up to a lovely, what were we, 15, I believe? Alright, so we're halfway there. We're gonna go ahead and take a little bit of a break here. Just get things schmoozed out, and we'll come back with the rest of our lovely little world-building adventure in just a bit. So, we are back from our break. Round 4 will be ensuing. We are at a rousing 17 points, and if we are not, well, you'll just have to tell me about it in the comments. But, as far as I'm concerned, this is a lovely 17 points, and it's time to throw a little monkey wrench into the works. So, this round will be worth a total of 6 points. You will have an opportunity to get 2 points for every action. However, there is a reason why. The world's activity this round includes the previous world's activity, that is, the creatures spilling out of the mountain range, suddenly and strangely choosing to coalesce around it. That mountain range in the middle, it's now nearly uncrossable just from the sheer mass of strangely hostile creatures just swarming it constantly. That extends up and down the border. to a reasonable amount. It's pretty tough to cross the mountains on the center of the world. You could call it the world's dreamiest kind of journey to make it completely around the world, because surviving it would be something worth talking about. However, more importantly than that is this generation. Each of our budding little empires, our little megacorps, will have a birth that is massively significant. If your faction ever needed a face, a hero, a founder, this would be the era they are born in. So, you have opportunities for 2 points. During each action, the first point will be given if the players can hook into it well, as per normal. The second will be if there are ways that they can interact with this founder, this face, whether it's making their career or breaking it. This person will define this era for your faction.
Okay.
So,
Alright.
whenever you gentlemen are ready, you can take it away.
Sure. I will actually use that as the spring point for my beneficial one, being that we had a very blessed birth in that we have somebody that was born of a union between the creator god and one of the humans. So we have a demigod birth on our side. And not only are they divine, but from a very early age, they are shown to have divination powers. They can see into different people's futures, and they can see into their present and past. They can tell who is going to have exceptional abilities or an exceptional life. And so a era of sort of divinely chosen heroes springs up.
Okay. What do you got for me then, Fletch?
It's in this era that the artificers have their greatest idea hit them. Now, this is a group spread across the entire little expanse we have here. Different areas, crafts and magicians who have either by themselves or as a group started coming to an idea for harnessing part of the natural elements and making it ourselves. The formation of turbines for electricity and the like. Creation, that taking the power from the gods themselves and giving it to us. Mastering lightning and its creation. But that's going to take pretty much the entirety of Act 4 to pull off here, let's be honest. So there's a lot of chance for the PCs to be adventuring in, around, and for said artificers.
Okay. I would say we're off to a good start. We've got a lot going on. Both the major figure that we're introducing seems very intriguing to the era on both sides, as well as fairly interactable. There's a desire to interact with them if the players are keeping up on world events at all. I'd say that warrants the 2 points on either side. So now we enter Action 2, where things go wrong. So this is going to be the same as usual for the first point, where we simply need to have enough going on that it feels like players could interact with the event that is happening. However, for the second point, We also want to spin the great tale of our hero, our face, our company model. They need a legend. Otherwise, how do you tell their story? So, you'll have to come up with something that both incorporates this and allows the players to interact with it to be able to grab both of your points. I almost said harness, but I chose grab. Don't ask me why.
Well, on one side here, we're on one side here we have the religious plotting, and the other side is the religious power grab. So,
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think I can work with this.
All right, what do you got then?
Well, our challenge is that our dragon overlords don't have quite the patience for things that their human and other monster underlings have. And they've grown fed up with the fact that we have um, been funneling money out to sort of keep things at a truce between us and the people that were displaced earlier. After all, that's coming out of their profits. So the dragons take matters into their own hands and throw us into full-scale war with the people in the Red Square area. And the dragons themselves went to the front lines and have been raising and poisoning and generally blight blasting that area to where it is not usable anymore as fertile land. Um, those people that do survive the war are going to be beholden to us, but um, we've entered a period of sort of war slash genocide. Um, and the other side of that coin is that the demigod is so aghast that that has happened that they've decided it's time that we as or the human population at least along with any other survivors of the attacks need to no longer be beholden to the dragons. So we've got two scale. We've got a war slash genocide with the displaced peoples, and the benevolent leader is trying to say, "Hey, that's not kosher. We need to have conflict with the dragons."
A lot going on, a lot of trouble over in dreamy little Dragonland. Meanwhile, with the really not quite dead but pretty dead people.
we're mostly dead. Let's be honest here. We're gonna do some restructuring later. Don't worry about it. So, what is the price of innovation? In this case, a lot of those magical-based dreamers are, well, gods don't always like it when you reach for things they think you shouldn't have. So, both the quests to get the materials they're going to need, the war itself, lashing out from the gods, they're dropping like flies. And to make matters worse, one of them, so far the most successful, has realized that what he needs is right here.
Ooh, the mountain range.
So he is going to have to cross the battle line to reach what he needs here. to complete his magnum opus.
Looking good here, looking good. I think there are plenty of opportunities when people start getting mowed down. Because either you're all aboard and you want to be a part of this genocide, you want to rack a body count, get your KDA going, or it's an atrocity and you have to be the guy to stop it. I think both sides told that part of their tale well. A little worth point there. For our second part, we were to better define the legend of our weird beep. The legend of our, well, local legend, our face of the company, our founder, our big dude. And I think that came along fairly well. I think the situations they are in provided more than enough opportunity to make them interactive. I think that did the job. I think I'll award both points to both sides, bringing us to a lovely 23.
Almost there.
Almost there. 30 points. So, we have one phase left here. Your usual point will be awarded if you are able to accurately describe the description, the consequences of your actions during this era, how they create the end of the era. However, the follow-up point, the second point for each of you, will be in describing the end of your founder, the cessation of their legacy that gives birth to their empire, whether it be by their death or some other means, and the naming of your empire, megacorp, whatever it may be. Yeah, I hit you with the name card. You gotta name things now.
I'm ready to go.
Alright, take it away then, Lunch.
All right, so the obvious price here. We're paying it in Dreamers and Artisans. We're paying it in forces to try to shove a spearhead through that line to get him in. We're paying it in adventurers' bodies. This could just be a fool's errand. No one's really crossed that line before. But getting a small group through, getting him there and back, that goes to start the new epoch. When the city's walls now cascade with rippling lightning. When undead are no longer being powered by the winds of magic, but by cores of pure energy. Well, this is when the founder wisely steps down. The nation of Abraxas will be in good hands. He will remain a advisor, but fresh blood has made the sacrifice this time. It was a heavy cost. But now we've stolen from the gods.
Okay. Severus, you ready to go?
I believe so.
Let's have it.
Okay, well, there are a few results of what has happened. And one of the unfortunate results is the population shift. The dragons were so destructive that instead of being sort of evenly split between humans and demi-humans, it's now closer to like 80 or 85% human, and the demi-humans are much smaller in number now. They're still around, but they're rarer. Effect number two is that the dragons tried to make an assault against the cult and found that they were not nearly as much of pushovers. And so the cult has managed to acquire a Dracolich. And the third is the leaders' pushback against the dragons ended up being successful, partly because they've been able to sort of divinely pick heroes to sort of rise up. And many of the dragons were eliminated, but there is still one sort of semi-benevolent overdragon that remains overseeing the land. But after all of this, the leader, she's decided that it's too much. There's been too much strife, too much death, too much war, and she flees one day into the jungle and isn't seen from again. However, in honor of her efforts and her helping bring us to such heights, they decide to name the society after her. And her name being Elise, they named it Elysia.
Fair enough. We got a lot going on at the end of an era on both sides. The cult was brought back in the East. They're relevant again. That's interesting. There's a lot we can do with that. And so far as our lovely founder disappearing to the jungle, we love to see it. Always good to have a local legend hunt, somebody to pop up in the background, you know. So that'll get our 2 points. I think on the other side of things, while it would be a little more difficult for me personally to come up with ways to work with the founder just retiring, I think their trip there and back to the mountain does kind of take care of both halves for me. I'm gonna say we are warranted to the point on both sides, bringing us to a lovely, I believe, 26, if my math is on. It's probably not. I've given up on math entirely at this point. Math is overrated. But what I will say is that does mean that we can end this with one more segment. Unfortunately, I've already got one more segment prepared. Would you look at that? What are the odds? It's almost like this was planned all along. No one would believe that, though.
No one will believe that.
So, what we're going to do for this last segment is bring it all together. It is the most modern era that we will design in this setting, and it is the era just after the last. If we want to get much crazier than that, we'd have to climb a little more down the totem pole, but I'd say we've got plenty of room already. Here's the kicker, though. Here is the kicker. There are only going to be 2 segments for each of you. The first will be the start of the era. How does your company rise up and present itself? How does your empire show itself to the world? That will award 1 point. The other point, to wrap this all up, will be involving the change in the world, which is that the mountains wrapping around the world are beginning to crumble in certain places. 2 of those places are directly along the belt of the land. And in some way or another, the other side of that has to have something that your empire wants, but theirs will not relinquish. What brings your side into the most direct conflict with the other? Is it ideology? Do they want to change something? Do they need more resources? Do they see a chance to expand? What brings down the walls into a clash?
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, whoever has their ideas prepared first can take it away.
Yeah. Well, the rise of the megacorp slash society slash nation, whatever.
Whatever it is at this point.
We whatever it is, the in this case, the rise of Elysia, um, will be um formulated on um two things. One, um, helping to kind of undo the hostilities of the last era. It's right at the end, and we just lost our demigoddess, and we've seen a bunch of suffering, and it's time to have more fruitful era. And to that end, a lot of um, the people that were displaced before are being brought back into modern society. The monsters that were still hostile around the mountain, we've begun having even more outreach to try to at least get them neutral, if not on our side. Even employing other monsters to help bring them into our way of living. We we want to be a society and a group that is teeming with life and teeming with opportunities for all creatures.
Okay. I see it, I see it, I see it. What do we got, Fletch?
Okay. We'll start with the thing we want. Because you'd think, being an undead technocratic society, that we really wouldn't need anything anymore, right? No, we still need food because we still have living people. And there's materials over there, wood, other things. And a group that is offering to join the ranks on the far side.
Hmm.
We just have to get to them. The big changes is, like mentioned, the technocratic society. We're moving away from just pure plain old magic to runic punk styles, much like Iron Kingdoms and whatnot. With the crumbling of part of the wall, that really lessens the cannon fodder troops we're getting. But then again, we can replace those now with something else. That's just a little more resource intensive, and again, why we need stuff over there. As has always worked for us, we push forward, we attempt to make deals, and when people aren't willing to deal, we bring the boot down.
Okay, I believe that covers the reason for your wanting to slip over to the other side. Severs, want to wrap things up?
Um, we actually end up having a kind of twofold big issue with the mountain coming down. One being, as Fletcher suggested before I was even able to get to it, it's like he was reading my mind. The remaining cultists, they haven't expanded much, but they've been solidifying their power base, and they're particularly emboldened by acquiring the Dracolich. And they see this segment of the world teeming with life and opportunity, and then they see that segment of the world teeming with unlife and technological advances, and they see kindred spirits. So one of the things is that our cult is going to um, start either migrating or trying to make their way over to his side to join their brethren. Um, on the other side of things, we did have a society that was inspired by a demigod. We've been um, very one and attuned with life, as opposed to the unlife, and we've had several clerics and paladins raise up and say, "Hey, we're on the side of the gods. We've heard even that they've been conducting heresies against the gods. It's time that those more divinely inspired of us start making our way over there to sort of purify the ranks of what's going on in those lands." So there is both a migration of the cult and a sort of holy crusade that is rising up.
Oh boy, it's a mess in the brewing. Everybody loves a good crusade. And that will easily qualify for the remaining 4 points, bringing our 30-point world adventure to an end. However, there is still one part left. What are we going to call this place?
World itself?
Hmm?
The world itself?
Yeah,
Fucked.
not wrong. Don't think that'd fly for a setting name, though. Not
Just make sure you bleep that out.
It's not getting bleeped. It's not gonna pass that.
Oh no, there goes his YouTube
There
monetization.
goes my YouTube monetization. Rob.
Oops, sorry. We'll fix it in post, I swear.
Narrator. They did not. What are we going to name this lovely ball of... Oh god.
That's a good question.
That's
So-
where it gets them.
This is one of those things where, since basically Sev and I have, from the jump, done a sort of duality thing. Each of us going a opposite side of the coin to get there.
Mm-hmm.
This is names are always the hardest part.
It really is. You guys got away with the first set of names. You didn't expect the other name.
I mean, I do have like one suggestion.
Go on.
Janus.
Yeah.
The name of the two-faced Roman god of duality.
And doors.
That'll work. We shall call it thusly then, and thus is how it shall remain. I'd say that's good enough for an episode wrap. But I think that'll wrap things up. I think that is end of recording.